Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My dad passed away years ago due to a sudden cardiac arrest. He had been on one of his so-called work trips at the time, but we later discovered the truth. We received a call informing us of his death not from a colleague or a hotel staff member, but from his girlfriend. Yes, his girlfriend. Something my mom and I had no clue about until that moment. She was sobbing uncontrollably on the phone, saying she had called the ambulance for him, but it was too late. He was already gone. We rushed to the hospital, confused and overwhelmed. When we got there, the doctors confirmed what his girlfriend had already told us. He had died from cardiac arrest. My dad was a habitual smoker, so we were well aware that something like this could happen someday. But none of us could have imagined the circumstances under which it did. His girlfriend, this stranger to us, stood there crying and apologizing to my mom and me for what happened to Dad. It was infuriating. Here was this woman sobbing as though she understood what we were going through. My mom especially was furious after the initial shock wore off. She had a long conversation with the woman and uncovered the ugly truth. My dad had been cheating on our family for the past 2 years. 2 years of lies, deception, and betrayal. My mom let the woman have it, venting all her anger and frustration. But what good could it do then? The person she was really pissed off at was my dad, and he wasn't there to answer for any of it. The funeral was surreal. It's hard to mourn someone when you're juggling grief and fury at the same time. My mom was a different person after that. She was heartbroken, yes, but also deeply, deeply angry. The man she had loved and trusted had not only died, but left behind a legacy of lies. As for me, I was devastated. Losing my dad was hard enough, but learning about his infidelity on top of it all shattered everything I knew about him. After the funeral, my mom sank into a deep depression. The betrayal weighed heavily on her, and she couldn't seem to find a way to process it. At first, she just withdrew, barely speaking. But then her grief turned into an obsessive need to uncover every last detail of my dad's affair. She wanted to know if he had any more side chicks during the marriage. She even started asking me if I had ever suspected anything, if I had noticed anything unusual about his behavior. Of course I hadn't. To me, my dad was just Dad. The idea of him cheating on my mom had never even crossed my mind. When I couldn't give her the answer she wanted, she turned to his electronics, his laptop, his phone, whatever she could find. For days, she pored over his messages, emails, and photos. Every so often, she would come to me angry and hurt, showing me some text or email exchange she had uncovered. She vented to me about how terrible my dad truly was, calling him names and recounting all the ways he had dared to betray her. I could see that this was her way of coping, but it was incredibly difficult for me to deal with. I understood why my mom had come to hate my dad. It made perfect sense. He had hurt her in a way that was impossible to forgive. But I was grieving too, and my grief was complicated. Yes, I despised what my dad had done to my mom. I hated that he had lied to us, that he had betrayed the family we thought we were. But at the same time, I couldn't just hate him outright. He had been a good father to me, and I couldn't erase that from my memory, even though he was gone. My dad had always been my biggest cheerleader. He showed up to every one of my basketball games, cheering louder than anyone else. He never missed my theater performances, sitting in the front row with a proud smile on his face. Then there were the small everyday things, like how we'd go out for ice cream every weekend, just the two of us. Those memories were real, and they meant something to me. However, my mom needed me to hate him alongside her. But I couldn't. I missed him too much, even though I was angry at him. During this difficult time, my dad's younger brother, my Uncle Deckard, would visit occasionally with his daughter Sylvia. Sylvia and I are the same age, so we've always been close, practically growing up together. Her mom had tragically passed away during childbirth, so Uncle Deckard had raised her entirely on his own. He was a kind man, quiet but dependable, and his visits were always welcome distractions for me. Sylvia and I would spend time together, and she always helped me escape the monotony of my life at home. Meanwhile, my mom and Deckard started spending a lot of time talking. My mom, still consumed by grief and anger, often asked him questions about my dad, whether he'd had any suspicions, if he knew why Dad might have cheated, or if he had ever noticed anything unusual. Deckard, as far as I could tell, tried his best to comfort her. He answered her questions as patiently as he could, and I think his support genuinely helped her through some of the darkest moments. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed the change in their dynamic, but at the time, I was too wrapped up in my own emotions to see it. My mom, who had been so broken after my dad's death, seemed a little lighter whenever Uncle Deckard was around. They laughed together sometimes and would get overly flirty around each other. It felt strange, but I didn't think much about their behavior until the day I finally saw something I could never unsee. That evening I had skipped basketball practice because I wasn't feeling well and decided to come home early. The house was quiet when I walked in, which was unusual. As I moved through the hallway, I heard muffled voices coming from the living room. Curious, I peered around the corner and froze. There on the couch were my mom and Uncle Deckard kissing. I was horrified. This was not some friendly peck. They were full-on kissing. My stomach churned, and for a moment I thought I might throw up. My mom and my uncle. How was this even possible? The image burned itself into my brain, and I couldn't stand to be in the house a second longer. I turned and slipped out the door as quietly as I could, running until I felt like my lungs would burst. I didn't want them to know I had seen them. I didn't want to confront what I had just witnessed. All I wanted was for that image to disappear from my head. Later, when I finally returned back home, I acted like I was none the wiser. I couldn't bring myself to confront Mom about what I had seen. What would I even say? The very idea of discussing it made my stomach turn, so I said nothing, and she never brought it up either. Over the years, though, I couldn't ignore the changes. My mom and Uncle Deckard grew closer, and their increasing fondness for each other became impossible to miss. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were just leaning on each other for comfort. Two grieving people navigating the loss of someone they both loved. But the way they interacted, there was an intimacy between them that made me deeply uncomfortable. Part of what made it so unsettling was how much Deckard resembled my dad. He wasn't just my dad's brother. He looked like a younger version of him. His mannerisms, his laugh, even the way he called my name sometimes. It was also eerily similar. There were moments when I'd hear his voice from another room, and just for a second forget that my dad was gone. Then reality would hit, and I would miss my dad all over again. Over time, Deckard started visiting more and more often, bringing Sylvia along as a pretext. "She wanted to spend time with you," he'd say. While Sylvia and I did hang out, it was clear the real reason for his frequent visits was my mom. They'd talk for hours, cook together, or sit out on the porch sharing quiet conversations. I always hoped that whatever was happening between them was temporary, that my mom would eventually come to her senses. I told myself she was still grieving, and that this was just a phase, a coping mechanism born out of loneliness and loss. After all, my dad had shattered her trust and left her broken. Maybe she needed someone to lean on, someone who understood her pain. I stayed silent, hoping this would all resolve itself somehow. Now, when I graduated high school, I had worked hard to get into a good college and was thrilled about moving to a bigger town to start this new chapter of my life. I was also confident about finances because my dad had always told me that he and my mom had been saving for my college fund ever since I was born. It was something he mentioned repeatedly before he passed away, and I had no reason to doubt that the money was there. So I sat my mom down to talk about it. I told her I needed access to the college fund so I could take care of my tuition and other expenses. To my surprise, she seemed caught off guard, almost like she didn't expect me to remember the fund existed. She asked me why I needed the money. I reminded her that this was the money she and Dad had specifically set aside for my education. And now that I was about to turn 18 and head to college, it was time to use it. Suddenly, my mom's demeanor changed. She started looking irritated, shifting uncomfortably in her chair, and avoided meeting my eyes. After a long pause, she started talking about how my Uncle Deckard wasn't as financially secure as we were, and how his daughter Sylvia was struggling to secure funds for her college education. Then she suggested that I could perhaps do a good deed by letting Sylvia have the money for my college fund instead of me. I opened my mouth to argue, to protest against the unfairness of it all. But Mom immediately raised a hand to stop me. Her voice was steady, deliberate, almost pleading as she began to explain why she had made this decision. She explained how hard Uncle Deckard had been working for years, putting in long hours, pushing himself day and night just to be able to give Sylvia a chance. My cousin wasn't just any student, Mom said. She was exceptional, bright, talented, and driven. Apparently, she had received admission into an amazing college, but she had no resources to pay for it. Uncle Deckard felt terrible about it because no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to give her everything she needed to succeed. Compared to this, Mom reminded me that I had always had my parents' full support. I had grown up in a home with both my parents, at least until my dad passed away, and even then I had all the resources in the world. This, Mom said, was why she thought I could manage to pay for my college on my own, while she wanted to give my college fund to my cousin. Mom justified that Sylvia could make better use of the money than I could anyway, and believed my cousin deserved this chance more than me. I was stunned. How could she even suggest something like that? This wasn't some random surplus of money lying around. It was the fund my dad and Mom had saved specifically for me. Also, why would she think about giving the money to someone else's child unless she felt something more about Uncle Deckard and Sylvia? Her decision felt like a betrayal, like she was prioritizing Deckard and Sylvia over me, her own child. I made it clear to Mom that while I understood Sylvia's situation, it wasn't my responsibility or hers for that matter. I told her that Sylvia's dad, my uncle, should be the one figuring out how to support his daughter's education, not me. I reminded her that my dad had worked tirelessly for years to save up for my education, and it made no sense for his hard-earned money to be given to his brother's child when I was still here, preparing to go to college. That's when my mom's irritation bubbled over into full-blown anger. She started on her usual rant about how I needed to stop idolizing my dad. She went on about how he was a low-life cheater who didn't deserve any respect, as if that somehow justified her suggestion. I'd heard this speech countless times since his death. Usually I just stayed quiet, letting her vent without arguing back. But this time was different. This time her bitterness was being used to take away something that was rightfully mine, and I couldn't let that go. I took a deep breath and told her exactly how I felt. I said I was tired of her constant need to tear my dad down, especially when she wasn't any better. That made her pause, her eyes widening in shock. Before she could recover, I went further, finally saying the words I'd kept bottled up for years. I told her that I knew about her and Uncle Deckard's relationship. I told her how disgusted I felt watching their behavior, how their closeness made my stomach turn. I told her that while my dad might have been a cheater, she was no better if she was involved with his younger brother, who she had always considered his family. After a minute or two of stunned silence, Mom finally found her words. She berated me by saying that I had no right to speak to her that way, that she and Uncle Deckard were adults and could do whatever they wanted. Her tone was defensive, almost defiant, as if she was daring me to challenge her further. Then she pivoted to attacking me, calling me ungrateful and selfish. She accused me of punishing Sylvia by refusing to give up the college fund, and insisted that Sylvia and Uncle Deckard were part of our family too. She said if she did decide to ever be with my uncle officially, then I needed to accept them and learn to embrace this new reality, as if it was my responsibility to make peace with all of it. I listened, growing angrier by the second. When she finally stopped, I looked her in the eye and firmly told her that if she was so determined to give Sylvia money for college, she could use her portion of the funds, the money she had contributed. But the portion that my dad had saved for me, that was mine, and I wasn't going to let her take it away from me. I made it clear that his money was specifically meant for my education, and no one had the right to take that away from me, not even her. When she started to argue again, I cut her off. I told her plainly that if she tried to give away my dad's portion of the money to Sylvia, I would sue her. I reminded her that tampering with funds my dad had set aside for me was illegal, and I would expose her actions to everyone if I had to. The words hung heavy in the air, and I could see the anger and frustration on her face. I didn't want to threaten her, but I felt like I had no choice. She had crossed a line, and I needed to make it clear that I wouldn't back down. In the end, all I wanted was my dad's share of the college fund. I didn't care about the rest, just what was rightfully mine. After endless arguments, my mom finally agreed, but not without saying how I was just like my dad and how she was so done with me for being so inconsiderate to my family. Her words hurt, but at that point I was beyond caring. Eventually, when it was time for college, I took the money, packed my things, and left home. Even though my dad's share wasn't enough to cover all my tuition and expenses, it was better than having nothing to bridge the gap. I took out an education loan and picked up multiple part-time jobs during my college years. It wasn't easy. I juggled classes, work shifts, and sleepless nights, but I kept pushing forward. I told myself that I was building the future I deserved, no matter how hard it was in the moment. In the end, my hard work paid off. I graduated, landed a stable job, and now I'm in a position where I earn amazing pay and can support myself independently. It's something I'm incredibly proud of. Over the years, my relationship with my mom deteriorated further. After leaving for college, I went low contact at first, but eventually it turned into almost no contact when she would constantly put me down and refuse to forgive me for what I had done. I just couldn't deal with her toxicity anymore. It's been 5 years since Mom and I have had a proper conversation. She hasn't wished me a single happy birthday or even reached out during Christmas or New Year's. All the time, occasionally, I catch glimpses of her through Sylvia's Facebook profile. Sylvia and I aren't as close as we used to be, but we're still connected online. From her posts, I've seen that my mom and Uncle Deckard visit her regularly at her college. They look happy in the photos, smiling like everything is perfect in their world. My cousin does talk to me sometimes, but we keep our conversation to the bare minimum. She knows my mom gave her my college funds and I never got that money. I don't know how she tolerates my mom and uncle's relationship, but it's none of my business, so I don't question her anything about it. Recently, my mother reached out to me. More precisely, she sent me a text demanding me to give her a call back as soon as possible, since I had ignored her previous phone calls. Against my better judgment, I gave her a call. That's when she informed me that she had been in a car accident and had fractured her leg. She explained that she wouldn't be able to work for a while, and without hesitation demanded that I start sending her money, several hundred each month, to help her out financially during her recovery. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her audacity. Did she have amnesia from her accident? We were not even on talking terms for years, and now out of nowhere she was asking me for $700, like it's nothing. Keeping my tone calm but firm, I told her flat out that I wasn't going to send her any money and that she should probably ask someone else who cared about her. That's when the arguing began. She immediately brought up the fact that I had a good job now, saying that my cousin Sylvia had told her all about my career. Then, in true guilt-tripping fashion, she reminded me how I had cut her off all this time and left her to live all alone. She pointed out that she had sacrificed for me for years, only for me to be this ungrateful. Then Mom asked me what the point of earning all that money was if I couldn't even help out my only living parent. Her words didn't faze me, though. I snapped back, reminding her that everything she did for me as a child was her responsibility, not something I owed her for. Once I turned 18, I was the only one who took care of myself. I asked her whether she had ever helped me while I was in college. No, she didn't. She chose to help my cousin instead, so why was she asking me for money now? I told her she should ask my uncle and cousin for help instead. Since that conversation, my mother has been sending me multiple voicemails complaining about how much she needs the money and pleading with me to help her out this one time only. Am I an idiot? Not an idiot. OP's mother didn't just fail OP once. This was a pattern of emotional abuse and financial betrayal. She tried to rewrite history to punish OP's dad through OP, then redirected resources meant for her own child to the man she was emotionally involved with and his daughter. That is not grief. That is selfishness. Now she's back because she needs money, not reconciliation. OP is not her retirement plan, emergency fund, or emotional punching bag. And now let's hear community's opinion. The moment she tried to give away your college fund, money explicitly saved for you, she permanently damaged the relationship. That wasn't a misunderstanding or a moment of weakness. That was a calculated decision to prioritize her emotional life over her child's future. The fact that she's now demanding monthly payments after years of no contact is breathtakingly entitled. You already paid your price. You owe her nothing. What disturbs me most is how she weaponized your father's cheating to justify her own choices. Two wrongs don't cancel each other out. She had every right to move on. But using her bitterness to erase your grief, shame you for loving your dad, and manipulate you financially is cruel. You are a child forced into adult emotional labor. You protecting yourself now is not cruelty. It's survival. And this is one of those cases where Reddit loves to scream, "Family helps family." But that only applies when the relationship hasn't been poisoned. Your mother cut you off emotionally, financially, and relationally for years. She didn't reach out to rebuild. She reached out to withdraw funds. It's okay to feel conflicted, but conflict doesn't mean you're wrong. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. Update 1. Thank you to everyone commenting under my post. I'm glad that we can all agree that my mom should have treated me better, and that she's the one who ruined our relationship. To clarify, my mom never went to therapy or grief counseling after my dad's death. I guess she might have also been trauma bonded with my uncle, and maybe that's how their relationship started. Until now, I don't think other family members really know the nature of their relationship. Everyone just assumes they're close friends since my uncle and dad used to be close too. Update 2. My mom has been calling me non-stop for days now. She's been sending me multiple messages every day, basically tearing into me and my late father, calling me every name in the book for not sending her money. To make matters worse, my uncle and cousin have now started to push me to help my mom out. My uncle, who has never once spoken to me since I went away to college, is suddenly trying to guilt-trip me by saying how much my mom needs me and that family is family, so I should help her out financially. I pointed out to him how he and my cousin have benefited from my mom's money so that his daughter could go to college, and now it's his turn to return the favor by helping her. He argued that he's been helping as much as he can, but that I'm her daughter, so I should be the one helping her out with money stuff. Update 3. After almost 2 weeks of my mom calling me and even sending me photos of her medical bills, basically blaming me for being a selfish daughter for not paying her bills, I decided that I needed to teach her a lesson once and for all. Someone here had commented that I needed to expose my mom in order to teach her some humility, and that's exactly what I did. I took to Facebook and wrote a long detailed post sharing everything that my mother had put me through over the years. I laid it all out, how she had emotionally manipulated me, how she had torn down my dad's memory while carrying on a relationship with my uncle, and how she had chosen to give his daughter, my cousin, the college that was meant for me. I didn't hold back. I pointed out how my mom had constantly pushed me aside while showering Sylvia with her attention and support, and how she had essentially cut me out when I needed her the most. I made it clear that not only had my uncle and cousin refused to help my mom financially when she now needed it, but that they were all now looking to me to take up the burden. At that point, I didn't care about my family anymore. This was the truth, and I had every right to speak it. Suffice it to say, within a matter of hours, my phone was blowing up. Multiple family members were reaching out to me in shock and disbelief, questioning what I had posted. My cousin and uncle started calling me, practically begging me to take the post down. They told me how embarrassed and humiliated they felt, as if their own actions and choices weren't to blame for the situation. They couldn't understand why I would air our family's secret, but the truth was, I was done trying to protect their image at my own expense. Then, of course, my mom started calling and sending me voicemails, screaming at me in anger and distress. She accused me of ruining her life and told me I had no right to expose her relationship with my uncle to the rest of the family. She argued how she deserved to be happy in her life, and I was being petty for no reason. In her messages, she sounded frantic, as though I had committed some unforgivable crime. She begged me to take the post down, pleading with me to erase everything, as if somehow deleting the truth would erase the pain she caused, the years of neglect and the betrayal. But I was done hiding, done pretending her life wasn't the only one affected by her choices, and I wasn't going to let her continue to manipulate the situation or silence me. For once, I was standing my ground, and no amount of guilt-tripping or pleading was going to change that. I left my mom a voice message, calmly but firmly telling her that if she didn't want me to talk about her life, then she needed to leave me alone completely, alone for the rest of my life. I made it clear that I didn't want anything to do with her anymore, and that if she truly wanted me out of her life, then she should stay out of mine. I told her I would take down the post for now, but that if she ever reached out to me again or tried to pull me back into her, I would put the post right back up without hesitation. After that, I blocked her along with my uncle and cousin on all platforms. I didn't want any more of their negativity or manipulation in my life. I also took down the post, not because I was ashamed of it, but because I didn't want to drag out the conflict any longer. For now at least, I have some peace. I guess I can finally focus back on my life and my work. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update. Y'all were right. My mom didn't stop even after I blocked her. Yesterday, my mom showed up at my house out of nowhere. I'm guessing my cousin or some other family member must have leaked my address to her. But regardless of how she found out, it didn't matter. I was at work, and when I got home, I was taken aback to see her sitting on the steps outside my door, waiting for me. At first, I didn't even recognize her. It had been so long since I'd seen her, and it was dark outside. It wasn't until she opened her mouth and started yelling at me about how I blocked her from my phone that I realized who it was. Her voice was full of anger, but I stood my ground and asked her what she was doing there and how she found me. She smirked with arrogance and told me that she would always find me no matter where I hide, and told me how I could not escape her. I didn't give in. I firmly told her that if she was here to ask for money, she needed to leave immediately because I wasn't giving her a single cent. That's when she pulled out a stack of hospital bills and shoved them in my face. She started to rant about how she was struggling to pay them and that as her only child, it was now my responsibility to help her out. Her tone turned almost desperate, and she kept insisting that I should take care of her financial problems now that she was getting old and had no one else to depend on. I shook my head at her audacity and firmly asked her again to leave. In desperation and anger, Mom then began to say how disappointed my dad would have been to see me grow up this way. So cruel, refusing to help my own mother out. I scoffed and told her she had no right to speak about what my dad would have thought. For years, all she did was badmouth him and blame him for everything that went wrong in her life. Now suddenly she was trying to invoke his memory to manipulate me into doing what she wanted. It wasn't going to work. I told her that no matter how many crocodile tears she shed, I was never going to help her out. Then she asked if all of this was just because she didn't give me her share of the college fund, and if I was holding a grudge after all these years. I told her it wasn't just about the money. It was everything. Even if she hadn't failed me financially, she had failed me emotionally. She had never been there for me in any meaningful way after Dad passed away. For years, she never once tried to fix things between us, or ever made an effort to repair our broken relationship. And now she wanted to reconnect only because of her hospital bills. Well, that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't willing to do anything for her. She didn't deserve a place in my life anymore. This time, I threatened to call the police on her if she didn't leave my property immediately. After that, she fell silent for a moment, but eventually she grabbed her things and walked out. As soon as she left, I stepped inside and firmly locked the door behind me. I now plan to install cameras around my house so that if my mom ever shows up again, I'll have proof to call the police immediately.